think now when we're looking at sort of more responsible media practices, we have to look at it as a whole, because it is beholden to us as an industry to make things right. That spray and play is not the way to do things anymore.
Hello, it's Omar Oakes from The Media Leader. Hope you're well out there. That voice you just heard was Justin Taylor, who is UK MD at video advertising company Teads. Justin spoke to my colleague Ella Sagar about sustainability in media and why the old way of doing things isn't, sustainable anymore. It's obviously a great time. There's never a bad time, but it's obviously a great time to be talking about sustainability in media as COP27 is happening in Egypt, the global conference of world leaders who are going to decide, or maybe not decide, what pledges can be made to make the world more sustainable. UK media, as well as global media, obviously has a huge role to play in this, as more and more of the media ecosystem goes online. All those videos you're watching, all those ads being served to you, they're all happening via electricity, which for the most part is still coming from fossil fuels. So, how do we make media and advertising more sustainable? Justin Taylor from Teads spoke to my colleague Ella Sagar about that.
How much is media contributing to carbon footprint, and are we measuring it properly, do you think?
It's one of those questions when I get asked, it's a really hard one to answer because there's so many different stats at the moment. Some stats sort of show 1% contribution to greenhouse gases. Some are sort of above 5%. I think whatever we look at and whatever we see at the moment, we can say that digital media and the internet contributes a lot to the greenhouse gases. If we're looking for comparisons, probably similar to the sort of airline industry at the moment. So pretty scary sort of numbers. And the challenge is that most of us don't know where that's coming from. We just consume our ads, they look great. So why is it contributing so much to these sort of greenhouse gases? So I think for me, the important piece really that's coming out of this is, how do we measure it? Should we be measuring it? And what are we measuring? That's a sort of core challenge at the moment, because when I look back at sort of back end of last year, beginning of this year, a lot of people were just talking about one thing: we can offset everything. It's fine, don't worry about it. And we didn't really give much sort of credence to what that actually meant. We just said, okay, here's a number, here's what I'm offsetting, I'm doing a great job. So for me, I think we're almost in the stage where we really need to sort of reset and understand exactly what we're measuring and how we're measuring. And there's some great businesses out there. Scope 3 are making a lot of noise out there. Impact Plus, who we've just partnered with, are making also a lot of noise in the market about how they can provide sort of holistic and granular insights for our carbon footprint and carbon footprint against digital campaigns. Then for us as businesses, we can then start to understand what that impact is on the different formats we're using, the different delivery methods we're using, so that we can look to try and move to a reduction standpoint, not an offsetting standpoint, because that I think is a really important one. And obviously I work in advertising, so for me, the key part is how can we reduce but not actually degrade the media that we're looking at, and actually deliver the business or media results that the clients are looking for. So measurement for me is the key one, but let's be brutally honest, there's a lot of emissions out there at the moment coming from digital media, so we have to do something.
How would you define sustainable media, in terms of the advertising that you're looking at? How do you make it sustainable or ethical or responsible? And is there a difference between them?
If I actually take it from that sort of a slightly different point and think about what irresponsible media is at this stage, and before I come to the sort of the quality side of it, as brands and as planners, and I used to be one many moons ago, we've often sort of gone down that route of quantity over quality. And that sort of spray and play or fly posting on a motorway type of sort of scenario, where we're just trying to get those sort of numbers up, reach as many people as possible, and let statistics do its work in terms of the action I need, whether that's viewability or whether it's a sort of a sale at the back end. I look at that in today's world and go, that's totally irresponsible, because it can be damaging to the brand. Some of those websites it's appearing on, or the content it might be appearing on, can be questionable. That can have negative brand impact. It can have reduction in sort of sales sort of volume. But if we're looking at that sort of sustainability piece as well, that type of spray and play can really bump up the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are coming out, because there's hundreds of thousands and millions of ad calls being made for these impressions. SSPs, DSPs, other tech vendors such as sort of verification, all looking at the same impression at the same time, all producing sort of energy and then emissions from it. So it feels like a lose-lose scenario. And that's why I think now when we're looking at sort of more responsible media practices, we have to look at it as a whole, because it is beholden to us as an industry to make things right. That spray and play is not the way to do things anymore. So I think we have to look at it in a couple of ways. We've got responsible media and sustainable media lumped in together, because as an industry we need to make our media sustainable now, not from a point of view of just the greenhouse gas emissions, about how we're targeting, how we're approaching, because that's the only way we're going to look to grow our business in the future. From my basis, and this is the Teads basis I look at here, when we think about sustainable media, we think about, from the first step is, how do we have a quality-based media out there? So premium publishers, quality publishers, premium content, quality sort of content. Now that's important because it gives a destination to go to. And there always has to be good quality content somewhere in the chain to look at. Now that quality content can be wildly different. A Gen Z, for example, might have content that is sort of short form video that is important to them, more humorous, and something they can engage with and snack with quickly. Someone in my generation might want a longer explainer that sort of goes through and spend more time with the media. So that really becomes the sort of definition of what I want. And that then leads to the next part of what I think from a sustainable media point of view is important. When we think about it, I need to make sure that the content I'm reading is relevant to me at the time, relevant to me with what device I'm on. I'm holding a fake mobile phone here, looking at a screen, so it's causing havoc in my mind. But trying to make sure I got the relevance of device and screen, relevance of content, and then make sure my ads are relevant to me as well. We come from an era of interruptive ads where we're understanding ads interrupt us, but we know, and from research we've seen, we know that's not the best way to get advertising. Advertising is best when you choose to watch it. That's where you get the highest attention. That's when you get the most response to it as well. So making sure that we're in the right areas, in the right context, in the right sort of environment with the ad that the user chooses, that to me is very much moving down that sort of sustainable media front. Now, take all of these component parts together, it also means that theoretically we should be delivering less impressions to create the action. So whether action is an impression, a viewable impression, whether it's a view, whether it's actually moving towards a sale, we want to minimize the amount of impressions that's coming in front of me and you to make that happen. And then that's going to help us in a much more sort of environmental sustainability sort of standpoint as well. The final part that I heard you mention before is sort of around sort of ethics and ethical media. Now, for me, this is something I think is going to start building more as well, because ethical media is a choice. So clients can choose to go onto certain types of publishers, certain types of content. We've got to make sure that if they're choosing certain type of publishers or content, they're not excluding big categories within sort of society. And we've seen that some very harsh brand safety sometimes. We exclude sort of big audiences that shouldn't do. So clients should choose based on their beliefs and values of how they want to sort of target, and that's ethical for them. On the flip side, publishers, we see it for publishers we work with, will only take certain types of clients as well. And we see fossil fuels being obviously attacked first by a number of publishers for various reasons. So for me, I think that comes down to the individuals at the moment and what their beliefs and values are, and then we can adapt to it. We go down to some of the real basics, right ad at the right time, and that's going to solve a lot of the sustainable problems versus just let's see how much reach we can get and how cheap we can make it.
I know that Teads has partnered with Brand Advance, for example, in terms of they have a diverse range of minority-owned publishers and other things like that. I just wonder what you see as why do people default to that sort of cheap reach, let's see how much we can get, instead of curating it more and thinking about the sustainable or responsible aspect?
I think it comes from history. We're used and we've modelled across sort of since the start of sort of TV and beyond, scalable media and understanding how scalable media works. And when we come on to digital environments, we've gone straight into that sort of scalable sort of solutions. And statistically, you can make it work. When I look at it, I think there's another route. We can be scalable, but we have to make sure it's more targeted. So we can reach more people and we can do that in a singular buy, but we might have to have adaptable creative that is delivered on the fly as well. And therefore, we're making it more relevant to more people more of the time. You talked about companies such as Brand Advance and more minority-owned type of sort of publications, for example. These ones are fantastic to sort of get onto plans. However, we can't just target them directly. Sometimes we have to make sure it's part of a wider sort of media buy. Again, that's important. At Teads, we've taken an opt-out approach versus opt-in. We want to make sure that we're really looking at a wide range of sort of publications together to target the widest audiences we can without excluding any. And we saw about brand safety before. We've seen, in the past, brand safety exclude lots of sort of, lots of content that shouldn't be excluded, and through a lack of understanding sometimes. So that's about working with clients, working with the agencies to make sure that we can broaden up that scope of sort of targeting and broaden up, the reach that can give as well. And we can see sometimes that, on the base level, some keywords, if it's sort of 8,000 to 9,000 plus keywords for exclusion, when you take a brand safety sort of lens of it, that can reduce down to sort of 500, because you're being much more open to sort of targeting possibilities. And again, for me, that's more sustainable because it's opening up more inventory, it's opening up more revenue to publishers, and it's opening up more audiences to see clients sort of advertising. We know that quality media and quality content delivers better results. That every bit of research I've seen, either things that Teads have commissioned or other businesses such as Newsworks recently have commissioned as well, shows that quality media sort of pays dividends in terms of that sort of attention. So we don't want to be limiting the amount of reach that you can deliver. And quite often the content that we might think is not as suitable to a brand can actually deliver more time on page and more engagement because we're engaged with that media. It's that sort of slow media versus fast media. Quite often, in social environments, we scroll really fast because it's not that engaging until we find that nugget of news or that nugget of information that we think's are personal to us, and then I spend time on that page. Now, quite often, the more relevant that is to me and the more relevant that is to my demographic, for example, then I'm going to spend more time on it, which is why I think naturally we're getting to a place that we're going to expand out the range of content that we're willing to go against. Yes, we're going to want to exclude some sort of probably heavy hitting stuff, the death, the industry, the porn, those type of things. But there's probably going to be a broader sort of scope of areas that advertisers are willing to go around. Quite often, publishers are having to put multiple ads on sort of pages or in articles to deliver the yields they need. So often the creativity is getting lost a little bit. And I think the more that we can work with publishers, the more we work with clients to actually look at formats that deliver higher engagement, higher attentive seconds, more sort of thumb-stopping needs, then it's going to be better, and we'll start seeing yields increase as well. So that might lead to a reduction in the amount of ads on a page, or definitely a quality of ads on a page as well. And again, all of these things I think are going to tie into sort of sustainability. The more impressions that we can help a publisher sell, the better. And then more content they can produce, and hopefully it becomes an ever increasing circle. If you think about sustainable digital media, speak to your publishers, speak to businesses such as ourselves, speak to the agencies, and really understand, what is behind your impressions, what's behind the targeting. If sustainability from an emissions point of view is important, make sure you're looking to minimize the amount of impressions you're using and maximizing the objectives delivered on those impressions. and have that sort of set up front. If it's about reaching the most wide, diverse audience, make sure you understand, either the content or you're going to be advertising against, or the sites you're going to go on, and try and include the broadest range of sites possible, and then see what works from a creative standpoint. And that's my last point on that, is making sure the creative is really sort of set up to deliver against those objectives. Either reduction of emissions, so making it relevant for the optimizations you need, or hitting the right audience. And with all this stuff, wrap it around with measurement at the moment, because the more we measure, the more we understand, the more we can grow together.